Drug smuggling is evolving. No longer is it just hiding drugs on people or in cars. Mexican drug lords are now recruiting and coming up with new ways to fool authorities. Case in point, a Carlsbad man turned smuggler for the Sinaloa cartel, Mexico's most dangerous. And he speaks publicly tonight about how he turned a hobby into a dangerous and very lucrative job. We'll try to effort that sound for you. The Los Angeles Times features the man we mentioned in a 4-part series this week called Inside the Cartel, and Lorna Carroll is standing by with more on that story.
Yeah, Kathleen, I'm going to introduce you to one of my journalistic heroes right now. Talk about investigative reporters. I'm joined by Rich Marosi from the LA Times. And Rich, I haven't gotten my work done this week because I have been so focused on your series of articles this week, and you got to read it, on the Sinaloa drug cartel. Let's start with the first piece that you began on Monday. You talked about spotters at the border watching cars as they came across.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Sinaloa drug cartel, in its efforts to get drugs across the border, does it in a very highly organized, intricate manner. They conceal the drugs in a car, and it's not just the driver crossing into the United States. They've got 6 or 7 people involved in the operation. That includes lookouts following the driver to the border, a lookout at the border, and another lookout that follows the car all the way to LA. So they always have eyes on the load, reporting on progress, and checking to see that everything goes okay. And circling around, they've got their supervisors, load car coordinators, and everybody after, when it's going down, in the end, has to be accountable to the bosses in Sinaloa.
In one case, you talked about a car coming through the border and the spotter seeing that the dogs were looking at it and finding the cocaine and making the call. And the bosses in Mexico are not amused, and they actually blame some of the couriers as these things happen, right?
Well, it's their product. So if it gets intercepted, if there's a seizure, we're talking millions of dollars, somebody's got to be held accountable. Now, if it's deemed good police work that resulted in the seizure, then they might be off the hook. But if somebody messed up within the cartel, then usually the cartel boss there at the border will have to pay it off, either through more work, passing more loads for free, or just out of his own pocket, and that can run into the millions of dollars.
I was blown away by the story, and hopefully we'll hear from the pilot in just a moment. But the pilot that you featured in today's article, a guy named Ward from Carlsbad, he had been moving drugs since the 70s. Tell me how you found this guy.
Well, he was caught in this big investigation of the Sinaloa drug cartel. He's been doing this for 40 years. He's been caught sometimes over the years, and he always goes back to it. In 2004, he got involved with the Sinaloa drug cartel, moving cocaine from near his home in Carlsbad, up in northern San Diego County, to, of all places, Lancaster County in Pennsylvania, which is Amish country. There is a key distribution hub for the Sinaloa cartel there, which provides distribution to New York, Philly, and Baltimore. So he was running these loads. He could get there, if he left here in the morning, he could get there by 8 o'clock, get the money, as much as $2.8 million, put it back in the plane, come back here, put it in his counting machine, and bury the money in his yard.
I love Rich talks about it in his article today about this pilot from Carlsbad, even teaching some of the distributors back in Pennsylvania how to dress down a little bit, not look like such thugs, so they don't draw attention. Let's hear from the pilot in his own words.
Starting at the U.S.-Mexican border by Tecate, I would come up through the mountains at treetop level, carrying anywhere from 900 to 1,600 pounds of marijuana. When I would fly into Death Valley, I'd be flying over 200 miles an hour and the height of telephone pole.
And he'd also be smoking a joint while he flew. He'd be mixing himself a whiskey and 7, and even watching porn on his computer as he was flying these loads. You also talked about a woman named Villalobos, a psychic up in L.A. County. Some of the drivers or the movers of the product would actually consult her?
One of the surprising things that DEA has found over the years in studying the Sinaloa cartel is there are dozens of distribution cells, and often the heads of these distribution cells rely heavily on consultations with psychics, of all people.
Yeah, we're looking at her place of business in L.A. right now. And what kind of things would she tell them?
Well, the first thing they do, they want to know if it's a good time to run a load. Do the stars align? These psychics can apparently, in their minds, divine the future. They can also curse law enforcement. They can do cleansings of stash houses, of their own bodies, and just basically, give them an aura of good luck. And the cartel bosses in Sinaloa often get angry at their workers over here because they rely more on the advice of the psychics than they do the bosses in Sinaloa.
Rich, is some of the best journalistic work I have seen in years. It is a must-read. You can link to it on our website, fox5sandiego.com. And you've got 2 more pieces coming this week?
2 more. One more.
One more, okay. And don't miss it in the LA Times as well. Rich Marosi, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks.
Kathleen, back to you.
Certainly a window into that world. And speaking of that, a San Diego-born teenager who admitted to beheading 4 people in Mexico is found guilty. 15-year-old Edgar Jimenez Lugo was convicted of a series of gruesome drug cartel-related murders and kidnappings in Mexico. His victims were found decapitated, hanging from a bridge near Mexico City last August. Under Mexican law, Lugo will only serve 3 years behind bars because he's a juvenile. Shattered windows and mayhem.